I first heard about this person probably a year ago. Somebody sent me a video of a woman talking about gambling, and it had a lot of views on it, as it happens with a lot of women. I was like, okay, interesting. I didn't know the person, and then I would say over the last 6 months, her stuff has been all over the internet. She's becoming a massive deal, and we're trying to get in on the ground level here. So, Taylor Mathis, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me, Jason. I'm super excited to be here. Super excited to chat with you.
So, your story, I don't even know where to start. I mean, so I was piecing together stuff I saw online. You're from Iowa. You're doing Major League Baseball bets, your prop bets. Um, I guess you're a free agent in the gambling gold rush, and everybody's trying to get a piece of Taylor Mathis. And then you get in a beef with some random person who I'd never heard of who was doing a gambling bit. I don't know where you want to start. Do you want to just talk about like how the hell you got into this gambling space?
Yeah. I'll give you a little background. So I went to the University of Iowa, like you were saying. I've got a little bit of the Hawkeye blood in me, originally from Illinois, but went to school there and knew I wanted to do sports journalism and sports broadcasting
Oh,
out the gate. When I was in high school, I already knew that that's what I wanted to do. So went into Iowa with that goal, with that vision in mind, and really started to go the route of doing sidelining, as I feel like a lot of females really do in the business
why do
when
you
they're
think
going
that
the
happens,
journalism
Taylor?
route.
Why?
I feel like we get, first of all, one, I think that's the way society and the industry has put a lot of females into that category. So that's the route a lot of people go. I also think, though, it tends to be a role, just knowing from other females and women that I'm friends with within the industry, that we tend to enjoy, though, too. It's fun, the interview aspect, getting to be on the field, seeing things firsthand. Being a sideline reporter is a fun job. I did it for quite some time. So when I
Oh,
got into broadcast, I started in local television after college. I moved to the middle of nowhere in Nebraska.
ooh.
I was a local television station reporter and anchor for sports. Really got my feet on the ground there, and the bootstraps were buckled up, and I was doing a lot on my own one man banding. But I learned a lot in the industry, so I would never take it back. But local TV is a grind, I will say. So anybody that does it, you get props from me. Did local TV, moved into sideline reporting out here in Arizona eventually in time. I covered the Suns for 2 seasons. And then COVID happened and I got laid off. And that's really what propelled me moving into
Mm.
the gambling space. I got approached by a smaller company, Bet Karma, and I still always credit them to teaching me everything I know about gambling because I only really had the sports broadcast background. I didn't have the gambling background, and they taught me everything I know. And for me, a little background side note, I feel like a lot of people don't know that I have like such a nerdy, dorky kind of background. I was valedictorian in high school. Math was like my thing. So the
Whoa.
analytics and the looking at the numbers that comes with betting, and especially for me, I really have a niche within the prop market, was something that was an element to the industry that I had not been able to use before as much when it came to sideline reporting, hosting. With
Right.
gambling, there's so much more of that intertwined. And I really fell in love with it. And then since then, I went from working at Superbook, one of the largest physical sports book out in Vegas at
Yeah.
Westgate, to then working for Sports Grid as a on-air host and betting analyst. And now
Mm.
here I am really moving into doing a lot of betting content. And thankfully, it's really started to take off for me. So I'm super excited to see what happens next.
Okay, so let's back up. Valedictorian is just like a big high school, or like
I went
again, I
to
don't know
No,
Illinois
and I
well.
will
Is this
say I didn't go
Chicago
to a
or?
giant. I went to a smaller school. I
Oh, okay.
went to well, I grew up in a tiny town called Sandwich, Illinois. Tiny town. I grew up in a farm town my entire life,
Oh.
and absolutely loved it. I would say for growing up, it was a great area to have a childhood. But then I knew I wanted to get out as soon as I was
Mm.
graduating. So it was great growing up there. But I don't know if I could say that I would live there still again. But yes, I was always really into school. I was always very focused, and I went to Iowa on an academic scholarship too. So
Oh,
it
damn.
was very much my wheelhouse was
Mm.
always in academics, and I've always kind of had that nerdy like background inside myself. So it was an easy transition really moving into gambling and using some of those
Yeah.
elements for work.
So, were your parents like farmers in a farm town or like math teachers in a farm town?
No, my mom was a teacher. My
Mm,
mom was a teacher. She taught kindergarten, and first grade though. So she was always with the youngers growing up. And my dad, not a farmer. I have a lot of family that owns farmland, farms, does all that, harvests, all that fun stuff. But my dad, no, he worked in the car business pretty much my entire life. But
mm.
we did live in a very tiny farm town, and my parents and my sister, they all still live in Sandwich, Illinois.
So I'm just trying to get an idea for when people, or whether they're listening or watching this on YouTube, it's like, okay, so farm town, valedictorian, math, gambling. It just feels like such a random hodgepodge. Why did you focus on baseball? Is that because like that was a sport where you found like an academic edge maybe in the numbers?
I would say no. So actually, I would say my three focuses are I feel like recently everybody thinks my only focus is baseball and Major League Baseball, but really my top three areas that I would say I cap or look at sports when it comes to
Mhm.
gambling are going to be MLB, NFL, NBA. Those are really my three areas that I mostly focus on. So obviously, with the NFL season starting here this week, I'm really excited to get that going so that people can see that I'm like, hey, I'm not just a baseball girl.
Right, right, right.
I do a ton of football too. Baseball, though, for me is probably my favorite sport. It's really what got me into sports. I didn't grow up playing sports. When I was younger, my grandpa, big sports guy, he was a coach and he's about the biggest Cubs fan I know. And a lot of people say that, but he is a very, very big Cubs fan. He took me to my first game when I was 5 and he taught me how to do a scorecard. And I was sold on baseball after that. And being a Cubs fan too, you're just sold on the aspect of being at Wrigley, like you're the lovable losers. I grew up through the tough times as a Cubs fan, but then
Mhm.
finally was able to experience a World Series. So being a Cubs fan in baseball, I would say is one of the top-notch teams to have fandom for.
So I would say one of the toughest struggles, gambler and talking about gambling and all that stuff is the amount of time you're just sitting around reading and going through numbers and
Yes.
spreadsheets and all this crap and shoving trends to the side and saying, no, that's not for us. But, and forgive me if this comes off incorrect. Like you are a 20 some, I'm assuming you're 20 something female. Obviously you've got
Thank
like a
you. Thank
social
you for that.
life.
I'm not, but
Oh, okay, fine. Let's say you're
I'll
31,
take
whatever. It doesn't matter. But
it.
like, I find it hard to believe that like you're going to be spending your waking hours when you're like, in the prime of your life and you're going to be looking at numbers. How are you doing that?
So usually I feel like people think my routine, like to hear what my routine is really during the week. When I am capping games, obviously, specifically baseball, really heavily at the moment. I wake up, I'm not naturally an early bird. I'm a night owl, but I got to get my workouts in early. So I get up, I work out. And the first thing I do after my workout is I would say for the next 2 to 3 hours, depending on the day, that's what I do. I look at numbers. I kind of read game script. When I go to look at bets in my process of looking at bets, the first thing I do usually is read over a bit of a brief game script of whatever game I'm looking at for the day, who we've got on the mound, who's pitching, who we've got in the lineup, all that little basic easy stuff. Then I start to dig into the numbers a lot, especially when it comes to props. I specifically focus a lot on pitcher props. And with baseball,
Mm.
numbers are huge, stats are huge. So I really dive in a lot to the stats of what I'm looking at, whether it's a K prop, an outs prop, or hits allowed. Those are kind of my three that I look at a lot. And dive deep into the numbers and then see if the numbers line up with the game script that I already read through earlier and really pick my plays based on that.
So do you have an algorithm for baseball or any of
I
the
do
sports?
not. I
Okay.
no algorithm. It's more based off. I try to give the example that, for example, I'm kind of known also for doing a lot of nerfies, no runs in the first innings bet. So for me, my process with that is looking at the two pitchers, looking at the game script. For example, yesterday I gave Cubs, Pirates, no runs first inning and it hit. But why I looked at that was because I know the pitchers well because I follow baseball very closely. I'm a big Cubs fan. I know how Kyle Hendricks pitches. I know he's aging. I know he does better at the start of his outings as opposed to at the end of his outings. So looking at the game script of knowing that pitcher well, and then on top of looking at the numbers that Kyle Hendricks and Skeens, as for an example, as of yesterday, were two guys that hold opposing batters in the first inning to like 160 batting averages. So for me, the mix of the numbers mixed with the game script there really tell me, hey, a Nerfy might be a good bet to take in this game.
Mm. Okay. So I confess. I pay attention to baseball in the postseason, and like if we get Dodgers tickets,
The
fine.
fun
But
times.
I mean, like I cannot imagine or fathom doing these August baseball bets. But that's where you kind of like popped. I
Right.
guess listen, I'm not trying to get you in some turf war with whoever this random Lucy person is, but you started doing these walking bets. Now, listen,
Yes.
I need full transparency, Taylor. What like prompted you to think, oh, let me just do a walking bet?
Okay. So here's the breakdown for me. I was outside walking my dog and
Okay.
I did a brief video just talking about, I was like, let's bring the sport of baseball back, actually, is what I was talking about. I was like, giving examples of why people should be more into baseball, Skeens being one of them, just talking about certain players, the romanticism of the sport, like people need to get more into it, whatever. And I did it while I was walking my dog, and I did this. And somebody commented on it, you should do videos this style walking and giving out bets.
Mm.
And I was like, that's not a bad idea. And I knew that Lucy, like I know her from the industry, I
Uh-oh.
knew she kind of walked and
Yeah, but
they're much different in my opinion. Does like an outfit check and then like gives off like 5 home run bets or total bases
right.
props. All of that from the start. I literally on social media, I was pumping her up, saying that I guess kind of did it first in a way, even though they're not at all the same. But I still was giving her all the props, giving her all the credit. In her eyes, we were good. We talked a lot, and we were gonna do some content together.
Oh,
And
wow. Well, wait, are you guys like
yeah,
text
so
friends or just social media?
no, just social media
Okay,
friends,
okay,
but
got it.
it threw me for a loop when she started saying a bunch of stuff publicly and on social media
Mm.
because I was like, time out. I thought you and I were cool. And I was definitely thrown for a loop in a weird roundabout way. I guess sometimes they say all PR is good PR because
Yeah, but well, you
shit,
did
this
put out a
happened.
video where you were like crying, which is a little sad. I don't know. I mean, like,
Yes. And I think for me, not to go into all of the details of everything, I had seen that she was doing a lot of this stuff on social media days prior to me ever saying anything. And I was like trying to be the bigger person. I went to my parents honestly about it because I was like, I don't really know what to do. I messaged her privately. She didn't respond to me. So like for me,
jeez.
then at that point, when it had been 3 days in, um, some of the things that I was seeing that she was not necessarily saying, but like promoting that her followers were saying about me and like liking and stuff
Mm.
like that. Oof, it it hit me a little bit to my core because I was like, I would never do that. To another woman in the industry, let alone another human. Period. I just didn't love a lot of what I was seeing. So I think that prompted me then after I had reached out to her privately, after I had been seeing this go on for days, to then I'm like, I guess I need to say something because my DMs were blowing up with people that are fans or followers of hers or whatever. I mean, I'm like over here
You
getting
could
death threats. I'm like, guys, we're walking
come
and
on.
talking.
No,
It's
no, no,
not
no, no.
that freaking serious. It's not that serious. So for me, eventually then I obviously felt like I had to say something. I did. She never acknowledged it, but that's okay. At the end of the day, I felt like I tried to take the high road as best as I could. So,
So there's this golf influencer named Paige Sporanic.
oh yes, I
I
know
don't. Do you know?
Paige.
Okay.
I know
So
Paige.
she's, I think, in Arizona, maybe near you. So we had her on the pod, I think, a year ago.
Okay.
And essentially, she had said the meanest people to her were not men. They were the other
Yeah,
women
women.
in golf. So, like, that's probably what's
Yeah,
happening. This girl is seeing you with your followers. I mean, listen, your followers are going through the roof. But here's the thing, like, I, I've worked with some women and, they had big followings on social. And then next thing you know, like, people are being mean to them and they're so into social that they couldn't really handle it. And
right.
that Paige has talked a little bit about that as well. And at some point, you've just got to not give a shit what any of these people say. But like,
Yeah.
that's a little tougher. Would you agree if you're a woman?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's something though that I've experienced truly throughout my whole career, which is a little sad to say, but in every element and facet of the sports media business that I've been a part of, I've experienced, I guess you could say hate or negativity in a lot of different ways. And I remember, I always use this story as an example because it was really my mom's advice. I remember when I first decided I was going to take this job in Nebraska and move and be doing sports and anchoring at I was in a really small part of Nebraska called Kearney. Um, I went in with such like a positive, happy, excited to, get started mindset. And while there was like a lot of positives to it, even being in a small town local sports broadcaster, I remember getting my first like viewer complaint that called in, and it was a woman. And she was telling my sports director that she didn't think it was appropriate for me to anchor sports turned to the side because my body type was distracting to like men and viewers. But you know what? My sports director called me in and he made me change it. And he never let me report sports standing on the side then. I always faced forward and I cried. I called my mom. I felt like very, well, one, confused, but at the same
Wait, hold
time,
on, hold
too, I
on.
was
So
just like,
instead of facing the camera, you were turned to the side.
well, like we were reporting and had like we had the
The
screen
screen
if you're
behind you.
watching
Right, right, right.
screen here, like when you're in local sports and we'd like point to the highlights and be
Yeah.
explaining. So I was like turned to the side,
And
you
this lady
know.
complained about that?
Yes. And my news director also switched it though. And then he never, and for me, that was a little bit of a hard pill to swallow just because I was like, I don't really know I can't help it. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do about that. Like, it's not really my fault that that's just how I'm built and that's just who I am. And
Yeah,
my news director, and at
sorry, go ahead.
21,
Yeah.
I was 21 too.
Oh,
So I'm like, at 21, like being told this, and I'm just like, okay, now I've got to, we're going to change the way we're doing it because other females are saying that it's distracting or whatever the case may be. It was a hard pill to swallow, but also I remember calling my mom and she was like, Taylor, you're going to have a thick skin if you want to be in this
yeah.
industry
Yeah.
because this is going to happen more and more as time goes on and, things grow and whatever happens in your career. If you want to stick with this, you're probably going to have to just be used to that type of thing, which has become part of the case. And I
Yeah.
definitely have over time been able to really separate my real life from what happens on social media or
Yeah.
on the internet. But it's definitely not to say it doesn't get lost, that it for sure still affects me as it would probably any human.
Well, I mean, listen, obviously your videos are doing extremely well. You know why. And like Paige, the golfer, basically said she reached a point where it was like, oh my gosh, this could be a business for me. And this is booming when I lean into it. So she is
that
just no holds barred. I don't care what you think. I don't care what sports director thinks. I'm going there. And I mean, I don't know, Taylor, are you going
I
to hit
think
one of those points? I
for
mean,
me, no, I don't see myself. I think for me, I have leaned into it a tiny bit. When it first started, I honestly was pretty annoyed when I started doing the walking bets, and those were the comments that I was getting. I was like,
but you couldn't have been
um,
surprised. Come on.
I was like, I actually was pretty surprised. I wasn't, I guess I wasn't surprised by the comments, but I was surprised with the fact that people thought that I was doing that with that intent because I was
Mm.
not.
Well,
And I'm
some
like, I'm just walking and literally talking. Like, I'm just doing my thing. Like, that was not, and at first I was getting really annoyed with the comments. And I was like, gosh, like, I've started to lean into it a little more. I still think though, with the fact that I do a lot of other content besides the walking bets, with that, I don't lean into that side of it with the
yeah,
other stuff.
and that's the tough part.
I
Sports
Yeah, and
fans,
I
you know.
don't, which thankfully though it's gone. I've started doing a thing called whiteboard wins as well,
Oh,
which
I
is
saw that. I
me
saw that. Yeah.
standing in front of a whiteboard explaining why to take bets, all of that stuff, and that's been going over really well for me too. So I've been doing like I do a lot of other content as well that still is related to sports gambling and to betting. I think part of it, I've been told this the entire in my entirety of being in the industry, there's such a blessing and a curse to the fact that media is like an aesthetic visual medium. I think for me, with that, a lot of people think, oh my gosh, that's so great. Like they think that if a girl's pretty or she's got certain looks, that people are going to be like, this got her the job and blah, blah, blah. Being honest, in my career, through traditional media most of the time, through the last, especially I would say the last 3 to 5 years, I really was focusing on very traditional broadcast and being more buttoned up and doing that. And I still coming from my agent's mouth, I've gotten told by everybody I'm too sexy, I'm too pretty, I've got the blonde hair and the big boobs, so it's too much essentially within a traditional broadcast space. So it's become hard for me. I'm like, I tried to go the button up route and it still is always been that I've gotten that same feedback always. So it's been hard because I'm like, I don't even feel like I'm being myself in a lot of those scenarios because I'm like, I'm trying to be so buttoned up and I work with a broadcast coach and she's telling me you've got to wear turtlenecks 24/7. I'm like, I live in Arizona. I'm like, can I just be myself, please? Like, I live in Arizona. I don't want to have to do this all the time. And I've kind of started to get to the point where I'm a little bit more, I've got a big personality. I've got obviously, this brand that is leaning towards the men that are enjoying certain parts of it, but I do have a brain and I've got a lot to say when it
Mm.
comes to betting as well. And you might come for the looks, but you're going to stay for
Well,
Taylor. That's
that's
that's the
that's the
way I see
interesting thing.
it.
So here's the thing. So we do have some hardcore gamblers who come on. I don't know if you want to qualify as degenerates, but one
Yeah,
of the
okay.
things that they're watching or listening, and they're instantly going to say, "Okay, how's she done this year? Give me the numbers. How has she done this year? Oh, not just this year. Give me the last 3 years of data. How is she? Because like she probably doesn't know anything. That's what they're going to say. So I'm
Right.
curious. At what point, like, do you track your baseball? Do
I do.
you?
I've been tracking my bets for probably 2.5 years now. So I have a betting sheet for anybody out there listening. It is linked in all of my bios. You can click it and you can go to betting sheet. Everything is tracked in
That's
there. So
awesome.
I'm like, when people try to come at me and say like yesterday, I had a really bad day. I did. My walking bets, I went 1 for 6. And
Mhm.
that's it happens with gambling. Some days you have, but Friday I swept and I did not lose a single play. So, think gambling always has up and downs. It's 50-50 and it's gambling for a reason. Like anything can happen. But I have a winning percentage. That is what I will say over the last 3 years in NFL, NBA, and MLB. So
Okay,
that
so how about this? Do you do any college? Because Iowa State this weekend, super low
I
total.
I'm going. I'm going
Oh,
to Iowa State this weekend. It's going to be my first game that I've been back to in probably 6 years. So I'm really excited. I don't do any college football. I am going to come up with a play for this weekend for that game since I'm going to be there. I'm like, I have to. But I normally don't cap a lot of college sports. I stick more to the three main.
hmm.
But I get into college basketball during March and I'll do stuff then. But I'm not somebody who's consistently doing college basketball throughout the whole season.
So let's go week one NFL. I know you're still doing a
Mm,
lot of baseball, but NFL's
yeah.
here. Um,
Oh,
anything
I've got
jump out
lots
at
for
you? So,
heck
oh, by the
yeah,
way,
of
let me ask.
course.
Arizona sports gambling online is legal. So, do you find yourself usually going to the sports book or just doing everything online or what?
I do everything on my apps. DraftKings is my go-to. I use DraftKings every single day. So that's what I use to place my bets, and I just do it straight from my phone. When I'm looking at week one of the NFL, I'm like, all right, let me pull up my notes because I've got my some of my plays that I'm liking right now for week one, specifically Thursday night football. I'm gonna ride with the Ravens. I'm gonna take the
Mm,
Ravens on the money line. I think that you look at the way that they lost last year to the Chiefs and they started very well and they were run heavy and then all of a sudden they decided that during the second half they were going to change their game plan. I think we're going to see a lot more running. You go out and get Derrick Henry, you got to use the guy. So I'm going Ravens money line. I also like Derrick Henry over 15 and a half rushing attempts in that game too because I look at a lot of props. So that's one of my favorite plays heading into the week. I and call me crazy. So I've seen a lot of people are on the Bills -5.5. And I don't know if I'm drinking the Arizona Cardinals Kool-Aid out
no,
here
that's right.
right
Yeah.
now, but I like what I'm hearing out here about the Cardinals. And I like the locker room dynamic that's going on right now. I like what's happening with their head coach, Jonathan Gannon. Kyler Murray being back. I feel like he finally feels like he is going to be the quarterback for the Cardinals. They believe in him. He believes in them. And they went out and got pieces for him now in this offense. I think that the Cardinals are going to be a lot better than people think. So if you can still get their win total over 6.5, too, love that play. But I've seen
Wow.
most books have moved up to 7.5.
Huh.
But I do like the Cardinals this season. And another big play that I'm looking at for week one, two that I've got on here. Give me Kirk Cousins to throw an interception. I've got the Bills to miss the playoffs. I like a lot as well
I
this
kind of like that.
season. And I've got Pacheco for an anytime touchdown as well. So I've got a lot of different things I'm looking at, but I'm trying to finalize a lot of my props for week one coming in.
I don't, I've been gambling for a while. But like my parents don't often ask me about it because I think they just
Mhm.
assume. But I'm just curious, do your parents and friends ask you constantly about gambling and for tips or whatever?
They do. I would say often. So I didn't grow up with my parents gambling. Neither of my parents gambled. My papa has always been a gambler. He still, calls in every single day. He's got his guy. So he is a huge gambler. He always has been. So him and I talk almost that often. He'll give me plays that he's liking for the day. He writes all of his notes every morning on a little napkin and he sits and watches TV. So he's very big into giving plays, but he's more of like a spread money line totals guy. And I obviously focus on the props. So he likes to bounce ideas off me. We go back and forth a lot. And a couple of my girlfriends have gotten really into betting since I've been in the betting space because I feel like they want to know, they want to understand what I do. They've gotten so I also kind of have dragged my friends over the years to like, let's go watch the NFL games. Let's go do that. And some of them with that have become like natural sports fans now and they like to bet as well. So I've got my girls that are on the betting train. They like to do. We just had our fantasy football draft last night. Um and they're into the betting as well. So it is fun that I've got some friends and family that are interested in what I'm doing and we can chat about it and they can ask for tips. I can see what they like and all that fun stuff.
I am curious, like, where do you think this goes? Obviously, you've got gambling companies interested in you to be an ambassador or a host or whatever, but where are we headed with gambling? It's still in its infancy
Mm,
being legal. It's not in every state. I mean, hell, California doesn't have it. Um, I'm just curious, what do you, 5 years from now, do you think it's continually thriving, or are you going to see the
gosh,
companies start to pull back a little bit from
I
promotion?
think I think we've already started to see personally from being somebody who's been in the gambling space pretty much since it's become legalized in most places to now over the first few years of its infancy truly in the United States. I feel like we've already started to see a lot of the media companies per se pull back on gambling content a little bit. I feel like a lot of their super bet heavy shows haven't, or bet heavy networks, I even should say, haven't done as well as a lot of people thought. And for me personally, I think that's because most of the gambling space within media is lacking any form of entertainment. It's boring. Unless you're a big gambler, like you don't care about hearing where the line opened and then where it closed and where the changes were. And like some of that stuff is just, to me, that's not going to grab a casual sports fan or a casual gambler. That's going to grab the hardcore gamblers that bet every day. And that's just not a wide enough net or audience for them to grab. So I think the pullback and why I think a lot of people, maybe like me or other people within the industry that are doing well more on the digital side of things is because it's more entertaining, but I see that as a whole with all of sports media moving very digitally. I feel like that's where you look at traditional local television and who watches that anymore.
Right.
Like it's just you see everything really. You see the layoffs within even the biggest media companies that exist right now going on. So it just, to me, building my own brand and having my own things behind me is going to be a better business move in the long run than banking on another company to be, I guess, my bread and butter at the end of the day.
So where do you think your brand goes? How do you envision this? Like, I don't know. Do you aspire to get back into TV and have a show, or is that just so passe and doesn't really fly anymore in 2024? Like, where do you take the brand?
So for me, I like to say that I don't only see myself as a sports betting brand. I see myself as an online personality in a
An
way.
influencer.
I Yeah, I have the sports side, but I feel like a lot of people don't know. Besides my sports side, I'm like I have a lot of other interests and I started a TikTok 2 years ago that's really more like girl focused, makeup, thrifting clothes. I story tell, I do book reviews. I'm like I have so many other hobbies
Hmm.
and that took off for me immediately. So I also have a side that I've got like a female fan base that a lot of people in the sports betting side don't know about.
Huh.
Um, so
But they're
I
not
see
on.
myself
Those people
more,
aren't on your like Instagram, right? Because I haven't seen that on there.
no. It's
Hmm.
really a TikTok account that I have. So I feel like, and with though the gambling side of things. With all of this that's kind of happened with some of my content, though, I've been getting so many interesting brand deals that are things that would be outside of the realm of quote unquote betting, but would go with what I'm doing. For example, I'm in talks with a shoe company right now to be sponsoring the Walking Bets. So every
No
day I'd
way.
be wearing this pair of shoes. And obviously, it's a sponsorship deal, but it doesn't necessarily correlate directly to betting. So I see myself with a wide variety of activities, and hopefully I just keep building my brand and my media persona over the next couple of years. And I truly am hoping the sky's the limit. My goal is to hopefully be like the next Alex Earl or Alex Cooper. So I'd like to be
Mm.
having my I want my own audience. I want my own community, whether that exists within sports betting or in realms outside of that as well. That's like my goal at the end of the day.
I am curious. We've talked mostly about like the female angle. What about like the male angle when you meet guys and you're like, hey, by the way, this pitcher, whatever your bet is in the first inning, are most people like taken aback, or are they like, holy cow, you're really good at this? And I'm not talking about
Hmm.
I'm talking in real life, not like the
Yes.
online weirdos. Yeah.
I have a great example. I spoke on a women in sports betting panel at Bet Bash in Vegas about a month ago now at this point. So I was getting to meet a lot of people within the industry that either work within the industry or are big bettors. Like some people there, I have been acquaintances with, or they know of me, I know of them. And some people obviously no idea. Like I don't know them, they don't know me.
Right.
I've had instances, it's a bit of both. People that don't know anything, period, about like me in the gambling space, I feel like usually treat me with a way, unfortunately, of a prime example. Me and a guy that works for a betting company. We were sitting there at Bet Bash, we're talking, we're up at the bar chatting, and a guy comes up and starts trying to kind of everybody was networking, get in the conversation. He didn't even address me. He didn't even like I was he is talking to this guy about like, oh, I should get you on my podcast to talk about your brand and blah, blah, blah. And then he finally talks to me after about 5 minutes. He turns to me and he's like, I didn't introduce myself. Are you here with him? And I was like, no, actually. And, then I go on to explain. And then he's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, oh, now I'm like, he's like, I should have you on my podcast, blah, blah, blah. And at that point, I was kind of already
Come on,
like,
just
I'm
who
not
is
going to
this?
lie
I
to
need to
you.
know who this
I'm
person is. I
already
don't know what
burned.
Best Bash is. What's
And
it
I
called?
was
Bet
like,
Bash?
Bet Bash.
What
Yes.
is that?
It's a giant, basically, sports gambling conference that happens in Vegas once a year. They do a bunch of seminars,
Who
their
puts it on?
speakers. It's basically a group of guys that are like very
Oh, it's
into
not like a
betting.
casino, right?
No, but it technically is in partnership with Circa though. That
Ah,
is
okay.
who is like they're the sponsor of it. So it was really fun, and like I had a great experience at Bet Bash. I was one of four girls that was there. So
And how
yeah,
many
it was a
guys
hundreds,
on the
thousands,
panels? All
thousands. I'm
dudes?
not even kidding.
Let me guess.
Literally,
Like
like,
basically 4,500 white guys, basically, right?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like
So it's
yes.
like an
And
insular. I mean, I've never heard of this thing. It's like an
yes.
insular community, probably. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like I that they asked me to come speak on the women in sports betting panel. So I went. I was very nervous because I knew that I was going to be one of the only women there, and I was kind of nervous to see how the whole thing would go over. And again, for that reason, because I was going to be on a panel, we were doing a Q&A. I was very worried about what are some of these guys going to come up with questions wise, or what are they going to say?
Mm.
Are they going to try to make me look stupid and be like, she doesn't, But I was very pleasantly surprised because the panel went amazing. And really, I ended up networking, making so many great connections, and met so many awesome people. I feel like I was kind of nervous for no reason. There was like a couple of the people, like I said, like that, where the guy like didn't even really acknowledge my presence and then was like, oh, maybe
Oh, I didn't.
I should have. But I'm just like that. It just kind of comes with the territory a little
Yeah.
bit. So I'm kind of used to it. I kind of just slough that kind of stuff off to the side. But overall, it was a great experience. So you got to be, I think if you're a female, especially within the betting space, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable a lot because there's very few of
Right.
us.
All right, we could wrap up the Super Bowl pick and then any NBA futures you have. We won't do NBA for a while, but I'm just curious.
Oh, okay. A Super Bowl pick is I'm gonna go with the Ravens. I'm high on the Ravens
What?
this
Okay.
season. I like the Ravens. They would be. I just look at defense wins championships. They've had one of the best defenses over the last couple years. I think they're going to be even better this year on defense. So if you're looking at who our top three favorites are, they're the Chiefs, the 49ers, the Ravens. Why not? Why not the Ravens? Why not the Ravens in this spot? If I had to pick a dark horse, I like the Green Bay Packers. They're my long
Hmm.
shot bet this season. I love what I'm seeing. I mean, we all know what we saw at the end of the season last year out of Jordan Love. They almost beat the 49ers on the road. So if they can carry that momentum into this year, I'm expecting them to be great. I love what Love and LaFleur say too about their offense. There is no running back one or wide receiver one because they are also in tune with each other. They feel like any of those guys could be their running back or wide receiver one.
Hmm.
I like the momentum that they have right now. The NFC North is going to be really hard, but I think that the Green Bay Packers could be sneaky. So they're my long shot dark horse Super Bowl pick for this year. And if I
And
had to look,
NBA,
NBA.
or maybe it's early. Maybe you haven't looked. Yeah.
I haven't looked much at NBA. I mean, shoot, as a Suns fan out here, I'm gonna say for the Suns to friggin' win the championship, but that's a pipe dream at this
Hmm.
point. I do like what I saw, men's USA basketball for the Olympics. What I saw out of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker made me hopeful, made me feel a little bit better as a Suns fan after the rough year we just had, thinking that we were going to have this big three and be some big deal, and we weren't. So I feel a little better about the Suns right now, but I haven't dug too deep into my NBA futures at this
Okay,
point
that's
and
fair.
what I'm
I don't
looking
even
at. But
have.
let's go with Suns to at least make the playoffs. I'm sure there's not
Oh,
great
come
odds
on.
on that, but we'll
Yeah,
go with
like
the Suns to
minus
make the playoffs right
1,500.
now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't have any NBA. I don't know why I asked that, but you said NBA was one of your top three, so I figured I'd take a shot. All right.
Yeah,
Taylor
yeah,
Mathis,
baseball though, I got that for you.
Yankees, Dodgers. Do you have futures on that or no?
Please no. If it's I get the point of Yankees Dodge. I live in Arizona. I'm going for the Diamondbacks all the way. They were my preseason pick. I am still high on the
I got to be
Diamondbacks.
honest. How are they? I haven't looked at the standings.
Oh, well, this was a huge weekend for NL West baseball right now. The Dodgers they were 2.5 games up on the Diamondbacks in the NL West. They had a 4-game series here at home. I went to two of the
Mhm.
games against the Dodgers, games 3 and 4. They ended up losing the series 3-1 to the Dodgers, so that wasn't great. Now they're 6 games behind the Dodgers in the NL West, so they probably won't catch them, but they are first right now in the NL for a wild card spot. They're 3.5 games above the
That's good.
Padres. The NL West is crazy right now. If you need to get into good baseball, watch the NL West because it's just nuts right
It's
now.
just
Um,
baseball's. It's such a tough
it's
sell.
good. I'm not even kidding. I'm a big baseball fan, but even as a casual baseball fan or a sports fan, being at the games I was at, those Dodgers Diamondbacks games, it felt like playoff baseball in there. It
Okay,
was
hold on.
loud,
You
packed, so fun. I, I had a blast this past weekend
Taylor,
going to
you
these
went
games.
to Iowa. Have you watched more baseball this season or Caitlin Clark WNBA games?
Baseball.
Really?
Baseball. Yeah. Yeah, I don't I like Kate. I love Caitlin Clark. Like I'm all about Caitlin Clark. She's great. I'm into it, but like I think when you're like a hardcore baseball fan and you start to do NFL and you're really focusing on those, especially from like a work career standpoint, I just don't find myself gravitating as much to the
Hmm.
WNBA stuff as often. I feel like I pay a lot more, like, I read a lot of the stuff that's going on in the WNBA a lot through social media, but I wouldn't say I sit down and like necessarily watch the
Mm.
WNBA
Yeah,
games.
no, no. I only care about the Caitlin Clark games. But
Yeah.
yeah, if baseball, it's just. So, are you watching the baseball games you're gambling on or no?
Oh yeah, yes. I'm so in on the Diamondbacks right now that if I and my Cubs are only 3.5 games out of a wild card spot in the NL. So I try not to get my hopes up with the Cubs because as a Cubs fan, you just know how this road goes. So I'm way higher on the Diamondbacks right now. I I listen to a lot of sports talk radio too. That's like a big area of where everybody's like,
Hmm.
what? You listen to that's all I listen to in the car pretty much is sports talk radio.
Oh my
And
goodness.
with
Wow.
being in Arizona and I being a somewhat of a Diamondbacks fan now at this point. I've lived out here for 8 years. I'm like, if I'm going somewhere and a game is on, I'm like, get the radio on. Like, I have to listen to all part. Diamondbacks are
Wow.
heavily a part of my daily schedule at the moment. So
I,
I'm fully paying attention to what's happening in baseball at all times.
you are like hardcore baseball. Oh my
I
gosh.
I I am, I
Turn on
am a
us.
baseball
So,
gal.
so you'll be like rolling out with your friends and all of a sudden like, hey, can you turn on the game on the
Oh,
radio in the
well,
car?
they know if they're coming in my car that the game is on. Like we are there. I've got MLB TV. That's a pricey one. They should work on that. Thankfully I
You
have
signed up for that?
T-Mobile. I I'm with T-Mobile. I get it for free. If you're with
Oh,
T-Mobile, guys, look at, and you didn't know that, you get a free subscription of MLB TV if you're a T-Mobile member. So I get it for
wow.
free, but like I'm always I will listen to games a lot as well, more so than necessarily watch them because if I'm shooting my content throughout the day, working, doing different things, it's easier to kind of listen than obviously sit down and
Gotcha.
straight up watch a game. So I listen a lot, but yes, I'm very all in on baseball season. I'm all in on the Diamondbacks right now too. They're a
Wow.
young team. They shocked people last year. I think they're going to shock people again this year.
All right. Well, good luck to your Diamondbacks,
Thank
Taylor.
you.
Congrats on, I mean, all the success. You probably are going to pick a gambling company here soon, and even more of the women in the industry are going to be pissed at you, and I'm sure you'll
I
handle that
hope not.
pretty well. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thanks for having me.